us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Good morning, everyone. Let's bring us up there and welcome to the Sports Memory Show. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack. And James, the J-Train, has a little technical problem, so he won't be in this morning, but we'll cover for him. You know, Jack, I was just thinking earlier this morning, how long we've been doing this, me and you. I know it's been over 3 years. I think it's been 4 years, if you want to count the original show. When I was on with Jim, I can't remember his last name. Right, Jim LeBruno.
They'll forget about us someday too. Like
they might. We might. But we had our original debate show, and we would go on every Saturday and debate. And of course, we continued that on our network here. We've kind of come away from that and went to Sports Memories for a while. We might get back to the debate again eventually. But people seem to like this show. They did like the debate. In fact, we were challenging every other hosts on other shows, which was fun for a while, too. That was pretty cool. But I was just thinking back. Remember, Jim suggested that we call ourselves grumpy old men after the movie. I don't know if you remember that or not. But that was one of the suggestions he had for our show. And I said, nah, Mac and Jack is good. I just reminiscing in my mind.
Okay. I don't remember how many years we've done it, Mac. I didn't, you start doing it and you don't look forward to thinking how long you are going to do it. So I don't really have a timeline. Even doing Glove Fist Monday nights, the boxing show with Frank Terzo, he keeps a record on the amount of shows.
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah, he has his little show 205 or whatever. I see that. So today in the Sports Memories, we got 4 guys. I added a 4th. I said James was supposed to be, and he was supposed to do this guy here, Jack, the Kansas Comet. I mean, Gale Sears. And he's in the Hall of Fame, even though he only played, for 6 years. But
Gale Sears was so sensational. I mean, he left his mark. He was the equivalent, even though he played a short amount of years, of what Bobby Orr was in hockey. When you talk about the greatest hockey player of all time, of course, Wayne Gretzky's name comes up first. You mentioned Gordie Howe the other day. Gordie Howe had tremendous longevity. Bobby Orr didn't. So how do you compare the two of them to say who was greater? Even a better comparison would be, let's say, Jordan and LeBron. When all is said and done, LeBron's career on balance would have been greater than Jordan's. The numbers he would have put up would have dwarfed Jordan's because he would have played a lot longer. But sometimes you talk about peak value. Who was better at their absolute peak, or who was better over a career? Okay? And like if we were going to make a Jordan-LeBron argument, certainly it's hard to make an argument. It's going to be hard to make an argument when all is said and done that Jordan had a better career, because he wouldn't have. LeBron is going to have the better career, but at their absolute best, their zenith, you could make a compelling argument that Jordan was the greater of the two at their absolute peaks. So, I mean, it's hard to judge who's the greatest in this and that. And back to Gail Sayers. But when you talk about football, it's very hard to unseat an incumbent, not just in football, in any sport, because once they stake their claim, people don't want to say someone's better. In baseball, it would be Sandy Koufax as a pitcher. No one wants to say they're greater pitchers than Sandy Koufax after him, but there have been pitchers with greater careers because they pitched a lot longer.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And in football, it's Jim Brown. He played 9 seasons, but there have been players, who, maybe played longer. Were better blockers or would block. Jim Brown refused to block. So to me, I hold out against them. But because he's Jim Brown, everyone automatically says he's the greatest running back of all time. Case closed. Even Barry Sanders' father said that. Yeah, Jim Brown is better than he rates him ahead of his son. So, but yeah, it's hard. It's different eras, different situations, and we have to judge Mac on different standards of greatness. What exactly are we looking for?
Well, Sayers' rookie season, 22 touchdowns. Yeah, 22 touchdowns in his rookie season. I mean, I can't think of anybody else who had as many or more.
He had 14 games.
He had 6 in one game, right? So I mean, he was the rookie of the year. He played with the Bears when they really weren't that good. I mean, I think him and Buckus played together. Of course, Brian Piccolo. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But he was hurt. He got hurt a lot. He got hurt a lot, and he kept coming back, kept working back. I know the final knee injury, according to the movie I watched, Piccolo actually helped him come back. He inspired him to come back. But he was injured a lot. His left knee, I mean, and of course, as a running back, you injure your knee. I see Chubbs injured the same knee twice. I'm surprised he's still playing, of course. Medicine has progressed a lot.
Well, their kidney injury is a lot different. If Gale Sayers been around today, his career doubtless would have been extended.
Yes, no doubt. If you look, and of course he played for Kansas. That's why he was called the Kansas Comet. He intended to go to the University of Iowa, but ended up going to Kansas. He really didn't meet with the head coach in campus visit. So anyway, but of course, when he became the running back there, he set all kinds of records. So I know you watched Brian's Song with Gale Sayers. I think everybody's watched that. That's that movie where Brian Piccolo and him were running backs at the same time on the Bears. Piccolo was supposed to be a good running back. I think he ran for 1,000 yards one year, especially with Gale Sayers injured. And he kind of told him, to get it together and get back on the field. They ended up playing on the field together. And then, of course, Piccolo got a tumor, cancer, and the movie, of course, was based off their friendship. This was based off an autobiography that Gale Sayers actually wrote, Jack. It's called I Am the Third. And let me see, I Am Third, which was the basis for the Brian Song. I remember watching that when I was a kid. It's an old movie. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I mean, it's a little dated, but it's still a great movie.
I saw it years ago.
Yeah.
I saw when it first came out.
Yeah. So anyway, Gale Sayers today, could he play? Definitely. No doubt in my mind, Gale Sayers could play today. And probably, as you say, be very, very a very good running back in today's NFL. Wide receiver, slot back, returner. I mean, he did it all. So
he would have been as explosive as any running back in the NFL. If he was playing today, probably the most explosive running back. I mean, to take off, who could get you a really long game. Right.
So, and then, of course, he is in the Hall of Fame. I said only 6 years playing football, but as you said, 6 very impactful years I wonder what would have happened, Jack, if he was on a real good team. I mean, you know, Chicago, the field's not that great. It's cold. It's wet. It's raining. I mean, imagine if he was playing like down in a southern stadium, southern team.
That's hard to say. Imagine he played for the Green Bay Packers. He wouldn't have been as good individually. He wouldn't have been given the freedom to do all he did with Chicago. He would have had to play more within the system. He would have been a great player with the Packers, don't get me wrong, but he wouldn't have been able to freelance as much, okay? And like with the Bears, he was their main weapon there. So they would constantly go to him. But you put him on a team with, you know, several weapons, you know, you got to kind of play a little more within, you know, their system. So, you know, it's easy to speculate what he might have done here, might have done there. I think he reached his full potential with the Bears. The only thing is the Bears didn't win. They had average teams. But when you think of it, Gale Sayers on offense, Dick Butkus on defense, on being on the same team, you have two all-time great talents on, you know, one on offense, one on defense. I mean, how many other teams can we think of, and this is fun, who at the same time had two all-time greats on both sides of the ball? I'm not talking about all-stars or outstanding players. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the short list of all-time greats. Dick Butkus is on the short list of the all-time great middle linebackers. Gale Sayers is on the short list of the all-time great running backs. That's what I mean by that. Right,
and that's a good question. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody.
It's hard.
Maybe Johnny Unitas and Bubba Smith. Maybe
Bubba Smith was not. Dick Butkus was clearly better than Bubba Smith.
Well, two different positions.
In my opinion, I don't think it was close.
Two different positions, though, right? Defensive.
Right, like Bubba Smith. I'm not talking about being a Hall of Famer, just
right.
I'm talking about one of the all-time greats. Bubba Smith wasn't one of the all-time greats.
Let's see, Bruce Smith.
In college, he was. Bubba Smith was in college.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, Jack. Bruce Smith and, I don't know, on Buffalo, I mean, you had Jim Kelly, you had Thurman Thomas. Jim Kelly
wasn't in on the short
I know.
list.
I'm just thinking. I'm thinking out loud.
You're thinking Thurman Thomas wasn't as a running back on the short list.
Right. Very hard.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a You know, you'd have great players on both sides of the ball. We could find a number of teams like that, but I'm talking about two legendary players, one on offense, one on defense. Butkus was a legendary player. Sayers was a legendary player. That's what I mean by that.
But can you really compare? You're saying Sayers is legendary. I mean, he is, because there's a movie about him, and Brian Piccolo, and for 6 years he did. Is he more legendary than Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders? Really?
More than Emmitt Smith. He was better than Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith was outstanding, but he was a grinder within the system. Barry Sanders was phenomenal. You can make an argument that Barry Sanders was the greatest running back of all time, arguably. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Right.
You can't make an argument that guys like Emmitt Smith and Franco Harris were the greatest of all time. You can't make that argument, I feel. Yeah. But you could do it for Barry Sanders, and you could do it to a small extent for Gale Sayers. If someone said to you, Mac, I think Gale Sayers is the greatest running back of all time, you would disagree, but you'd say, I understand where you're coming from, even though I don't agree. If they said, I think Franco Harris or Emmitt Smith was the greatest running back of all time, you'd say, come on, you know, they were great, but, you know, don't put him as the greatest ever.
Why wouldn't you put Emmitt because of the Dallas Cowboy offensive line? Is that why you wouldn't put him?
He was outstanding. No, Emmitt Smith was outstanding. If you want to tell me he was a top 10 running back of all time, I'm not going to argue that. Okay, I'll accept that. I'll be fine with it. But if you're telling me Emmitt Smith was the greatest running back in the history of the NFL, I mean, I would have a problem with that. I don't think he's close to being that. I think Barry Sanders was clearly better than Emmitt Smith. That's what I mean.
I would agree with that.
Jim
Walter
Brown
Payton too, I think.
better than Jim Brown was better than him. Walter Payton was better than him. You can make an argument that Walter Payton was the greatest ever because the way he blocked and could catch balls out of the backfield, and do everything all around.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you're not going to tell me the team would pick Emmitt Smith over Walter Payton.
No. Well, think about it, Jack. The Chicago Bears, and I know this is going way back, had Red Grange, Gale Sayers, and Walter Payton as running backs for their teams. It's a pretty good stable of running backs. So anyway,
greatest running back in Chicago Bear history. Now you have a little fun. You would have to pick Payton over Sayers because he played longer. Let's be honest about it, his career. But now you're talking about Red Grange, who I never saw play. But Red Grange, I mean, he's a legend. Red Grange, but it's a different era, a completely different era. Was Red Grange? I could make this argument for Red Grange. I could say he was greater in his era than Walter Payton was in his. If I want to make that argument, if I want to base it on that, then I could say Red Grange was the greatest running back in Bear history. But push came to shove, give me Walter Payton.
You could. You definitely could because he was that popular. And, at 6'2" and 230, he was a big guy for that time. I mean, he was a big boy. Anyway, let's get
Wait, didn't the Bears have Mike Ditka on that team with Butkus?
Yes, they did. He was a tight end.
They have firepower.
Yes. They
did. Man.
I mean, I'm trying to think.
Jack Cannon was the quarterback, I think.
They haven't had a real quarterback.
Jack Cannon, I believe.
Yeah, he wasn't that good, Jack.
No, he was average. He was average.
The 20s. Luckman. No, Drew. I'm trying to think of like the.
Jim McMahon was about the best they had in modern time. McMahon was good, but he wasn't. I never considered him quite elite, but I considered him a good quarterback.
Yeah. He was a fun guy. I mean, he made some throws he had to, but that was mainly Walter Payton in the running game.
Well, you know who I'd compare him to if I had to say Jim McMahon? Something on the level of maybe a Dak Prescott. He was close to that. Is that fair?
I think Prescott's better than McMahon. I think McMahon. You could put McMahon on a level with
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I guess. But they didn't throw. The Bears really didn't throw the ball. I mean, they just the defense beat the hell out of you, and they ran the ball, and they had a decent tight end. They had Willie Gault was their main wide receiver. That was their main wide receiver, and I mean, that defense just killed it. The defense was just oh my god. But anyway.
Yeah, I bumped into Willie Gault once at the fights. He went to a boxing show, and at ringside, he kind of like bumped into me accidentally. He was with some other people. And I remember he turned to me very nicely to apologize in a really nice way because George Foreman was right nearby with his friends. I felt like saying, and this would have been funny, I didn't say it, Willie Gault ran track when he played in the NFL, and he was part of the World Championship relay team at Helsinki, Finland in 1983. So I was on the verge of playing dumb, saying, I know you're an athlete. I saw you somewhere. Wait. Helsinki, 1983, you had the relay team, World Track and Field Championship. He probably would have loved it because when you do another sport and no one knows you from that sport, you would have probably been tickled. It would be like telling Jim Brown, I know you. I saw you play somewhere lacrosse at this place. They love stuff like that.
Of course they would. Not what they're just known for. So we're going to push on to a pitcher with a unique, well, I don't know if it's unique, but a cool nickname. One of the best pitchers in Yankees history, Jack. And that, of course, is good old Whitey Ford.
Yeah, I'm not going to dazzle anyone with statistics, even though I'm going to say some statistics, because, I mean, James loves to do that when he comes on the show. He tells us each stat. He tells us the guy's stats in high school, even, you know. But everyone does their thing. He's not wrong. I'm not saying my way is better. This is just my style. I like to talk in general about Whitey Ford, who's the winningest pitcher in New York Yankee history, 236 wins. It doesn't sound overly impressive because a lot of Hall of Fame pitchers, a number of them have more wins than that. But Whitey Ford, he was nicknamed by Elston Howard as being the chairman of the board. And he was basically the Yankee ace for a good part of his 16-year career. So if you want to think of what Whitey Ford was to the Yankees, he was basically what Garrett Cole is to the Yankees now, except long-term, year after year after year. Whitey Ford would be at the top of his game. And he wasn't the hardest thrower. He didn't blow guys away with their fastball. He was the Greg Maddux of his time. He knew how to pitch. He knew how to paint the corners, you know, and he just was just a master at pitching. And even in the famous 1961 year where Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle were dueling, you know, to break Babe Ruth's home run record, and all the focus was on Ford and Mantle, Whitey Ford wins the Cy Young Award. He slips under the radar. He's 25 wins, 4 losses. So he was arguably the most important guy on that famous 1961 team. You know, and he was close buddies with Mickey Mantle, very close friends. And Mickey Mantle would say, well, Whitey Ford really is the driving force behind the Yankees. And Whitey Ford always had this calming effect. He didn't get along that great with Casey Stengel in the sense. Whitey Ford wanted to pitch more, but Stengel would take him out of games early. Stengel was ahead of his time. Stengel did it then the way managers are doing it now. And I think the way managers are doing it now are wrong to a large degree. And I think that'll be proven once again in the future. But for now, you know, Stengel did things the way managers do right now. And when Ralph Houk took over as manager of the Yankees in 1961, Ford broke into the big leagues, by the way, in 1950. And then in 1951 and 1952, he was in the service. And then he started resuming pitching in 1953. And he pitched until May of 1967 when he had to retire because there was circulation problems in his shoulder. In fact, I remember opening day in 1966, the umpire stopped the game, and there was a big dispute because he had a hot water bottle in his back pocket. Okay, I guess to keep his hand warm. And when you think of it, what's wrong with that, Mac? For circulation, why can't a guy have a hot water bottle? I mean, he's not on steroids. Give me a break. Let him have a hot water bottle. Why? They made him remove it. And Ralph Houk is going crazy.
Well, I guess they're worried about that spitball thing. Yeah. Good morning, Rick. How you doing? I guess they're worried about that grip stuff. You know, Jack.
Everyone uses the spitball today. We watch games on TV, guys are going into their mouth. I have to admit, there has to be some control. You can't let a guy just spit all over the ball and do grease or this or that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much that helps you make a ball move or whatever. I'm not qualified.
Well, when you baseball, Jack, you've held up baseball. It's very tight. It's very slippery when you first get it. Any kind of wetness or dirt, rough it up with a rock, scratch, get something, gives you a better grip. So when they give them, they all give them new baseballs too. It's not like they keep the baseball. As soon as that baseball is thrown away, they throw a new one at them. I don't get that, but
it's like Mike Scott, who was supposedly scuffing all the baseballs when the Astros played the Mets in '86. Right, was inside the Mets' head. But Whitey Ford, he always held it against Casey Stengel that the 1960 World Series, he should have been out there for the deciding game. Casey didn't pitch him. You know, Casey didn't pitch him in that game. And the Yankees wind up losing the 7th game like 10-9. It's like, was an absurd situation that Whitey Ford wasn't in there.
Do you think that was, Jack, do you think that was part of the personal rift, why he didn't do that? I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, Casey Stengel was a good manager, one of the best at the time, especially. Why wouldn't you put your ace in there in the last game? I mean, it's over. If you lose, it's over. Do you think maybe that personal friction between the two of them?
No, Stengel had his way of doing things. Stengel could be very heartless. For example, Joe DiMaggio didn't get along great with him. It's Joe DiMaggio's last year, and he wants to put Joe DiMaggio at first base. Stuff like that. And Mickey Mantle and Casey would be getting along kind of like so-so. Billy Martin was Casey's guy because when Casey looked at Billy Martin, he saw himself to an extent because Casey was a player in the 1920s there, I think early 1930s. He's a very scrappy player, Casey Stengel. So he took Billy Martin under his wing, and Billy Martin swore by Casey Stengel. That was like his father figure. So, he wouldn't really get on Billy, and if he did, Billy didn't notice it. Billy loved the attention, that he would be given. But he didn't, his stars like DiMaggio, Ford, Mantle, Stengel really didn't give him a great amount of slack. And how good a manager Stengel was, he managed before coming to the Yankees. I've got to look up what he did. I think, he was so-so. Maybe our producer, someone could look it up. But I know when he went to the Mets, they were an expansion team after he left the Yankees. And the Mets were dreadful. I mean, his managing didn't help the Mets. But in all fairness, would any manager have been able to elevate, the Met teams? They got a lot of big-name players who are at the end of the line. But Whitey Ford, 200, there's 236 wins. And even the ironic part about it is when he retired finally, his last year, he pitched only 44 innings. He had a phenomenal ERA, I think 1.64. His ERA, it's only 44 innings, but 44 innings isn't bad. That's the equivalent of 5 full games, Mac. Yeah. When you think of it. So the guy could still pitch, at that point at the age of 38. He retired. He was Yankee pitching coach, for a little while. And, he basically remained a Yankee legend. Is anyone going to break his record of 236 wins as a Yankee? Now, Andy Pettitte would have broken it had Andy Pettitte not gone to the Houston Astros for 3 years. When Andy Pettitte, after the 2003 season, he signed as a free agent. He went to Houston, his hometown, because the Yankees didn't aggressively pursue him. The Yankees were like lukewarm in signing Pettitte. Eventually, they would have given him an offer the same as Houston, but they took their time. And Andy's hometown, of Houston, the Houston Astros, they wanted Andy Pettitte. They were more aggressive. And when you have a chance to go home, the place that you live in the off season, it's hard to turn it down. But then Andy Pettitte came back to the Yankees, which was his real home. He even works from today. But had Andy Pettitte been with the Yankees those 3 years, he would have broken Whitey Ford's record, and I feel that would have given him a strong case for the Hall of Fame, all-time winningest Yankee pitcher.
When Andy Pettitte went to the Astros, wasn't Roger Clemens there too at that time?
Yeah, and they actually had success. People forget. Yeah. In 2000 and I think 2005 it was, or 2000, either 2004, 2005. I think it was 2005. The Red Sox won the World Series in 2004. They beat St. Louis. In 2005, the Houston Astros went to the World Series for the first time in their team history. For the first time, in large part because of Clemens and Pettitte, their contribution. They lost in the World Series to the Chicago White Sox. So it wasn't a complete wash because they did go to the World Series, but was it worth it for Andy Pettitte in the long run? No. Maybe had the Astros won the World Series, he could have said, look, I was a World Series winner with Houston too. So he could have rationalized and said that made it worth it. but just going to the series, even though it was the first time, Houston never went there. You know, if Andy Pettitte could be given a do-over, you know, I kind of wonder whether he would have elected to stay with the Yankees. But that's revisionist thinking, Mac. And revisionist thinking is usually never a good thing unless it's to help you in the future.
No doubt. So Whitey Ford, best pitcher in the Yankees history?
Whitey Ford,
and
best pitcher in the Yankees history. The Yankees have not had legendary, great, all-time great pitchers. I mean, when you think of it,
not just as a Yankee. I mean, we had Clemens, we had a lot.
Not just as a Yankee. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just stopped in. I guess Whitey Ford would be it because Clemens and the rest of them that came in, all these guys were from other teams, so they were free
Ford
agents.
was as good as Messina. If Messina, Clemens did have to rate ahead of Ford, not Messina.
No, all I'm saying, Jack, is they were free agents. We kind of brought them in. Whitey Ford was with us, and that, that's all I'm saying.
Right, you make a great point. CC Sabathia, he'll get in the Hall of Fame. He's probably going in as a Yankee.
Right.
But I wouldn't call him a greater Yankee pitcher than Whitey Ford.
Right.
Clemens, I wouldn't call him a greater Yankee pitcher than Whitey Ford.
Right.
Because Clemens had several stops. To me, I would personally like to see Clemens get in the Hall of Fame. That's just me. That's debatable. But if Clemens got in, I would like to see him go in as a Yankee. But I get the feeling they might put him in as a Red Sox. I don't know, would it be his choice or whatever. But you make a great point. Clemens was a stopover, a very nice stopover, a somewhat lengthy stopover. He had two terms of service with the Yankees, two different runs. But
even David Wells with his he had a perfect game or no?
Ford was better than David Wells.
Right, I agree. But again, another free agent. So I mean, and listen, I'm glad we had him. It helped us win the World Series, that's for sure. These pitchers that came in, I'm glad we had them. But
Sabathia is thought of as being a Yankee, though. People, when they hear Sabathia's name, they think of him as being a Yankee first and foremost over his other teams like Cleveland and a stopover Milwaukee.
I would agree with that. Big what to do about Saquon Barkley breaking the single season rushing record. And he would have to break this guy's record, Eric Dickerson, Jack. We don't talk about Eric. When we talk about the greatest running backs in history of the NFL, we really don't talk about Eric Dickerson. I mean, he does, even though he had 2 more games more than O.J. Simpson, he does have the single season record. And that's who Saquon Barkley would have had to break. Eric Dickerson was a great running back for the Rams. He played for the Colts. He played for a couple teams. But we don't really talk about him. I mean, we just mentioned we went to Walter Payton. We went through a bunch of running backs, and we didn't talk about Eric Dickerson. Now, Dickerson didn't stay with the same team. He didn't play for as many years as Walter Payton or Emmitt Smith, not even close. But at his time, when he was there, he was maybe the best in the league. I mean, you could argue that. Comes over from SMU with the Mustangs. He gets Rookie of the Year, NFL Offensive Player of the Year in '86. UPI NFC Offensive Player, 83, 84, 86, 6 Pro Bowls, and 4-time NFL rushing leader during those offensive player things. A great running back behind a great offensive line. If you remember back then, Jack, the Rams ran the ball. You had Vince Ferragamo at the time that was there. That was a quarterback, and it was Eric Dickerson in that offensive line. That offensive line had a bunch of Pro Bowlers on it, a couple Hall of Famers. Jackie Slater, number 78, you could argue one of the greatest tackles in history of football. The center, let me get that center's name, because the center was Doug Smith, unbelievable center at that time. But again, Drew Hill might have been their best wide receiver at the time. They really didn't throw the ball. And they ended up going to the playoffs, losing the Giants 16-13 in 1984. When Dickerson had maybe his best year. So for the Rams, that was the Rams team. Then it was Eric Dickerson and their defense, Jack Youngblood. I think Fred Dreyer was on the team for a little bit when he was there. Hacksaw Reynolds, the middle linebacker. I'm trying to remember all these guys.
You got good job, Mac.
Thank you.
They play in the LA Coliseum.
You're right. They play in the LA Coliseum, and do they still play in the LA Coliseum?
But I think about the LA Coliseum. I think of all the empty seats you see.
Yes.
It's so big,
huge. It was like 100,000. You could sit 100,000 people.
Yeah, it makes it. You like to be able to accommodate all the people that want to see games, but you hate to see all these empty seats. It gives an impression that there's a little bit of a lack of interest. Well, there might be none. That's why these teams that are building new stadiums are building them with a little less of a seating capacity.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. They definitely are. So he got traded to the Colts, Jack. And this was a huge trade. It involved Cornelius Bennett, a couple first-round draft picks, a couple second-round draft picks. I mean, this was a huge – I don't remember it. Reading it, I see how many people got traded back and forth. Buffalo got a lot of good players out of this trade and helped get their team ready to go to the Super Bowl eventually. They reunited him with Ron Meyer, who he was with SMU. That was his one of his coaches at SMU, so he was reunited with them. In 9 games, he ran for 1,011 yards with the Colts. He passed 10,000 yards, the fastest player ever, even faster than Brown, Sanders, Smith. 7 straight seasons with more than 1,000 yards, Jack. This is what I'm saying. As we're talking about running backs, we're talking about Gale Sayers, we're talking about all these great running backs. Eric Dickerson gets lost in the shuffle.
My fault. I'm mentioning him before because I do think he is one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we don't give him his due. I was giving examples before, and Eric Dickerson should have popped out at me. Something about Eric Dickerson, he would break off long runs, but he wouldn't do it in sensational fashion. He would be a power runner, but he wasn't like a Derrick Henry type power runner, an Earl Campbell type power runner. There's another name, Earl Campbell. But Eric Dickerson, if I had to, pick between him, Earl Campbell, John Riggins, I think I go for Eric Dickerson. Yeah. I believe it's all close. Give me any of them, and I don't give a darn.
It is.
Eric Dickerson went number 2 overall in the 1983 draft. That's the year that John Elway went number 1. Elway had the dispute with the Colts, and but could you imagine the Colts they traded the rights to John Elway to Denver, okay? Because John Elway said he wasn't going to play for the Colts. Well, what the Colts should have maybe just done, just draft Eric Dickerson outright number 1 and let the team go next pick John Elway. But the franchise was scared, the fans are going to get mad that you didn't take John Elway. But could you tell me this, Mac? Would you owe any apologies if you drafted Eric Dickerson and he had the career he had and you bypassed John Elway? I mean, you always want the quarterback. I understand you'd rather have Elway. There's nothing that quite compares to a franchise quarterback. I get that. But we heard the same nonsense with the Giants when Saquon Barkley was there. They should have taken a quarterback. Who should they have taken? Sam Darnold afterwards, at the time? I mean, the Giants made the right move taking Saquon Barkley number 2.
Yeah, they did. I agree with you. But that's a great question because if you think about it, Eric Dickerson was a great running back, but he only went to 1 playoff game. And doesn't a quarterback have more to do whether you go to playoffs or Super Bowl than a running back? I don't know. If you're Jimmy Brown, no. If you're Jim Brown decides that, right? That's the way the Cleveland Browns were built when Jim Brown was there. But today, is Saquon Barkley could be the reason why the Eagles are in the playoffs. If he wasn't there, Jack, honestly, would the Eagles be one of the favorite teams to go to Super Bowl? I don't think so.
Well, he did transform the Eagle offense this year, Saquon Barkley. It's a
Right.
different offense. They're throwing the ball a little less, relying on him a little more. We'll see how it plays out. You know, football, things change on a dime. If the Eagles lose their first game at home in the playoffs, the feeling is going to change in Philadelphia. It could change very quick. You know, we discussed the other day, too, even though I know it's a memory show with Saquon Barkley, whether he
Right.
should be allowed to go for the record. And I'm
Yes.
kind of wavering on this now. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, maybe just go for the darn record,
Of
because
course.
I think you want to know why? I think Saquon Barkley is so popular in that Eagle locker room also that the players on the offensive line, they feel in a way it's their record as well. Their names aren't going to go in the record books, but they know that they would have played a big part in Saquon getting the record. And
Agreed.
they're going to want to buy all in. And what I
Agreed.
would do, I wouldn't have necessarily sat down with the owner. I would have talked with the owner. Don't get me wrong. You got to give him the courtesy. And I would have spoken to the players on the offensive line and so on and said, guys, you know, you realize you can't break the record and then have a letdown the following week. That's what concerns me. And I'd sit down with Saquon and I said, that's what worries me. I want to give you a chance to get it. Let's put our heads together. If I'm Nick Sirianni, I wouldn't make the decision on my own. I'd say, guys, help me with this decision because I'm not sure what to do. And I admit, I don't know what to do. I need help, guys. Could you help me out here?
They say the biggest worry that Sirianni and the front office has about playing Saquon is if he gets hurt. Right? If you bring him out there, he gets hurt, your playoffs are probably done. But to me, so he gets hurt here or he gets hurt in the first playoff game. That's football.
Right.
You know? So to me, this record has been in existence for about 30 years? About 30 years, Jack. And who's to say that the Eagles, everybody says, well, the Eagles got to get ready to go Super Bowl. Who's to say they're going to the Super Bowl? Who says
Exactly.
Who says they're going to beat Tampa Bay? Who says that? Nobody says that. You don't know that. So to me, this is a chance for history. It's like with Bill Belichick, and I know it's different because of the team. He wanted the perfect record. He went for it, right? He wanted to have that perfect season. Right. I agree, man. And the players came to him and said, listen, we want to go get the record. Now, I know they had a bye. The Eagles don't have a bye. They're going to go play right away. So, but to me, Jack, this is maybe a once in a lifetime thing. Saquon Barkley may never get close to this again. And it's sort of like Aaron Judge, right? It's like you're at what's Barry Bonds, 75 home runs? You're at 74. Sit him down. Yeah. Are you going to sit him down so he don't get hurt or something? Come on. It's ridiculous.
Well, I remember Jim Caldwell when he was the coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Completely wimpy move. The Colts are 14-0.
Yeah.
And he pulls his starters, including Peyton Manning, because he wants to rest guys thinking of the big picture. Winning the Super Bowl. Well, they got to the Super Bowl and they lost to the Saints. But that's besides the point. When you have a chance for perfection, you go for it. What are we going to do? Managers after 7 innings, a pitcher has a perfect game. Oh, take him out of the game. We don't like his pitch count. We got it this, we got it that. I mean, I would do it Saquon Barkley if he got off to a slow start and he only had 9 yards at the end of the first quarter and needed like 99 yards the next 3 quarters, then I would consider yanking him. I'd say, look, let's see. I tell the offensive line, if you get off to a really quick start and get some yards in the bank, I'll stick with you. But if we don't get many net yards, we're not going to keep straining and pushing. We'll take it as we go along. And besides, you can rest your defensive unit. You can rest your wide receivers. You can even rest your quarterbacks. I mean, in a sense, everyone knows Saquon is getting the ball. The Eagles aren't going to come out passing, everyone. I mean, the Giants are going to key on them. And also there's the X factor. I know the Giants would try to stop Saquon, But let's be honest about it, Mac. You know, as a player, if there's someone on the other side of the ball who you like a heck of a lot, you really like him tremendously, and he was your teammate, you'd say, I'm going to try to stop him, but I'd still like to see him get the record.
Sure. Of course you would. I don't think you would lay down and let him get it, but
but you
you
wouldn't
would be
be.
very-
I don't think you'd be going at 100%. I think you'd be playing it, to try to stop him, but you wouldn't be playing as hard as you normally would.
Maybe so. You could be right. I would think most players would be like that. I do.
It's human. It's human. If a guy is so darn popular, some of the Giant players might feel a little guilty. Man, I don't want to stop Saquon from getting the record. Yeah. He's a good dude. They're probably saying in the locker room, talking, he's our guy, Saquon. He's like family to us, And that I had that thought process. Yeah. It would work in his favor playing the Giants, not because the Giants would have potential defensive issues, but, attitude-wise, it could, help him out.
Possibly. So we got one more guy to talk about, Jack. He played for the Knicks for a while, but he played for quite a few teams. And I barely remember this guy again. Back then, basketball wasn't as big as it is now. So I got to watch him a couple times. Had a couple big games for the Knicks. Bernard King. Bernard King was a very interesting basketball player. He was born in Brooklyn, selected by the New Jersey Nets, 4-time NBA All-Star player, comeback player of the year in 1981, an NBA scoring champion in 1985. So he originally played for the Nets, and I think he played for the Nets before Julius Erving did, Jack. And he was the leading scorer for the Nets at the time. He was averaging 24.2 points per game. That's when he got the Rookie of the Year. Then, of course, he was traded to Utah Jazz. First player since Rick Barry to score at least 50 points in consecutive games. Leading the Knicks 105-98 over Dallas. 60 points when he played against the Nets, when he went back and played against the Nets for the Knicks. I mean, he got hurt. Knee got hurt. And whenever he is in a basketball Hall of Fame, Jack, I don't know if you remember watching Bernard King or not. I imagine you do somewhat. 6'7" small forward. They say he was pretty unique the way he played the game.
Yeah, I mean, at his best, he was great, sensational. And I remember Larry Bird talking after games saying, listen, I don't really want to guard him because I can't stop him. Larry Bird was saying he was too good for me, to guard.
Yeah.
That's how good Bernard King, was. I mean, we were talking a little about athletes before, career-wise and peak value. Even though you could look at Bernard King's career stats and point out to some very good things, it's not the longevity, it's him at peak value, just a great player.
Yeah.
He had knee issues. He suffered a horrific knee injury at one point in his career, and he managed to come back from that. He was never quite the same again, even though he did make a nice comeback from it.
Yeah,
he had his brother who played in the NBA too, Albert King, too.
I don't remember Albert. I remember the name. I don't remember watching him. I remember
they went to Fort Hamilton High School in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah, his knee. He was trying to block a dunk. Torn knee ligament, torn knee cartilage, broke the leg bone. I mean, his knee was just shot. He did go to the Bullets, 87-88, with Moses Malone and Jeff Malone, and they did end up going to the playoffs. They lost the playoffs, of course, but he did go to the playoffs with the Bullets. In 1990, I didn't know he played this late. He scored 44 points playing against Jordan, and scored 52 points, 161 and 133. So, I mean, he still, as you said, he still had some. He could shoot, but he definitely was not close to what he was when he was healthy.
Yeah, I remember also he was sensational where he led the Knicks to a victory over the Pistons in the playoff series. And I remember one of the writers, I forgot which one, but I remember his words. He says, the Knicks didn't lose to the Pistons because Bernard King wouldn't let them lose. And I have a recollection of Bernard King just taking over that final decisive game at the end. And really, he wouldn't let his team lose.
Would you say if he, well, again, we're going back and saying this, if he didn't get that injury, maybe he would have been, well, he did get in the Hall of Fame.
Well,
maybe,
it's hard. It is.
It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell. People second guess all the time on stuff. I mean, Phil Jackson tried to kind of knock Jerry West a little because they had like a personality thing. Because Jerry West had a lot of tension with the Laker front office because Phil Jackson was dating Jenny Buss, the owner's daughter. And Jerry West came out publicly against it. So there was all this tension that lasted for years. And Jerry West wasn't popular with the Laker organization, which was really unfortunate because he was Mr. Laker.
Ridiculous.
But after Jerry West passed, Phil Jackson was on there. And when they invite you as a guest after someone passes away, you're coming on there to say some nice things about him. But Phil Jackson would take detours. Say, well, Jerry West, that got to be pointed out, didn't want to draft Magic Johnson. Well, which is correct. Jerry West wanted to draft Sidney Moncrief from Arkansas. Now, obviously, Magic Johnson was the game changer. He was the right guy to draft. But Sidney Moncrief made it to the Hall of Fame. He wasn't a bust. He was the type of player that Jerry West foresaw when he said draft him. He lived up to the potential that Jerry West saw and wound up being a Hall of Famer. So, people kind of steer conversations a certain way. Even like I pointed this out, like the Trailblazers really blundered not taking Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. But it didn't turn out to be a wasted pick on Sam Bowie because they traded him away and they got Buck Williams, who was one of the greatest forwards in Trailblazer history, who led him to the finals one year. So it wasn't like a wasted pick. But people will change the conversation. They'll say, oh, the Trailblazers wasted the pick. No, they blundered by not taking Jordan. They blundered big time to me, but it wasn't a wasted pick. They did get good value out of the pick.
Right. So, Jack, today we got a couple games. We've got we got Baltimore at Cleveland. Baltimore, unless I know something crazy happens.
Baltimore's not losing.
Yeah, they got to win that game. And
that would be a heck of an upset. Then you never know. Game 1 of the regular season. Who would have thought New England would go into Cincinnati and win? And is that game haunting Cincinnati now?
Yes.
Cincinnati probably won't be in the playoffs. It's probably coming a game short. Had they won that game against New England, it looks there'd be a good chance of them, being playoff bound. Definitely. And since he's in the playoffs, would they be dangerous?
Yes. They still have a chance. Small chance, but they have a chance.
But the point, they probably won't get in. That's
yes.
The
Agree.
But don't let them get in. Otherwise, they're big trouble.
Baltimore will get the have first place if they beat Cleveland today. Cleveland, as I said Friday, are resting their players because they're
Cleveland. They're resting. That means Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, is coming back, and they want him in position to draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So they do, So they do want to lose him. I'm sure if you sat them down, and no one could find out, and you asked the Cleveland organization, you could have a win or loss, pick one of the two, they would take the L easily. Yeah. But then again, any team might do that in position to draft high.
The front office might say that if you had a gun to their head.
Yeah, I wouldn't if I were a player, unless I'm a franchise player. If I'm Myles Garrett, I know I'm back with the team and I want to improve for next year, but whatever.
Exactly. And then we got we've got Pittsburgh playing. Aren't they playing Cincinnati today, Jack? Am I right?
Yeah.
Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh. Miami loses. Trying to think of the other thing that happens. I think that's it. I think if they beat Pittsburgh and Miami loses, I think Cincinnati.
Does Denver have to lose too? Denver has to lose.
That's right too. That was the third one. Yeah, that's the third one. No, I don't think they'll lose.
That's a hard one. I don't think Denver is losing to Kansas City because Denver has all this to play for. Kansas City does have a bye next week, but they are resting a number of their guys. Carson Wentz is starting instead of Mahomes, but Carson Wentz, experienced starter. He's been with them all year. He might play very well today. Tomorrow, Carson Wentz.
I mean, they have Denver favored by 10 points. That's way too much. I don't think Denver is 10 points better than the Kansas City second string, to be honest with you.
Well, that's the question. Denver's starting unit who desperately needs a win to make the playoffs going against Kansas City's backups.
Yes.
That's what it basically is for the most
part. This is what I heard, Jack, yesterday. I heard Mahomes will play a little bit. I heard Pacheco will play a little bit because he's coming off an injury.
You want to keep sharp. You want to have a little bit sharpness.
Right.
It's kind of like tuning up.
Right. So I don't know how many starters are going to be. I would imagine the offensive line's playing. They're not going to let Carson Wentz get killed. Defense, maybe they will.
I mean, they don't want him to get hurt. The backup quarterback's important. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. They're not going to play offensive linemen more than they want to because they're concerned about protecting Carson Wentz.
Okay, I'll go with that. I imagine Chris Jones will rest. Maybe a couple cornerbacks will rest. But I listen. I think the Chiefs have a shot at beating Denver. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't think Denver's there yet. I think they're close. I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they have the wide receivers yet. I don't think their defense is good most of the time. And they got a rookie quarterback. So I don't know.
Well, it's not far-fetched what you're saying, Mac. Okay? Carson Wentz wants to have a big game. And I don't know, are they going to let him throw the ball a lot or what? I think, you're better off throwing the ball maybe a lot to your receivers rather than pounding it and putting this pressure on your offensive line. I don't know how they're going to play it. I'm sure if you asked the Chiefs, if you gave them the week off, they would gladly not play, and have an extra bye on top of the bye,
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I don't think Denver's 10 points better than the Kansas City Chiefs. I know.
About them, right? The Chiefs 15-1 record.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow. I'm going to mention very quickly. That's gonna on the show. We're going to talk about the Lion-Viking game. Both teams are 14-2, and the team that's 14-3 is going to have to be a fifth seed in the playoff. Go on the road. How terrible. Right. The year before the Super Bowl was played, there would be two teams playing for the NFL championship game. The Western Division winner against the Eastern Division winner. In the Eastern Division winner, there was the Packers there, as I recall. No, not the Pack. No, the Packers. I forgot the two. Okay. No. It was the Packers against the Rams to see who would play the Colts in the championship game there. Okay. The Rams had a record of 11 wins. The Rams played the Colts. I'm sorry, Matt.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm driving you crazy there. The Colts were 11-0-2. They were unbeaten, 2 ties, 11-0-2. And the Rams were 12-1. Going into the final game of the season, the Rams beat the Colts. The Colts have a record of 11 wins, 1 loss, 2 ties, and they're bumped. They're not in the playoffs at all.
Yeah, so there you go. It's people complain. This just got brought up again, and it seems to get brought up every few years. Why should this be ahead of this one? They have a worse record. They have a better. That's the way it is. It's the way I think it's the way it's always going to be. But as Jack said, tomorrow, the big football show starting at 8 a.m. Roku channel, YouTube. We're all over the place. Great show. If you love football, you love the show. So we'll see you tomorrow, Saturday night. If you're going out,